Howdy YouTube, Eznix here with a little update video on Arch related matters. Arch has been very busy repackaging its firmware, um, causing a lot of issues for itself mainly and for its users. Also, the AMD GPU drivers seem to be in a state of fucked upness. I don't know how else to put it. A lot of complaints, especially with this trying to roll out a totally new way of distributing their firmware packages and at the same time integrating um, patches from the upstream developers and not really giving them enough time to vet, and then a lot of complaints from users, especially users of Endeavor OS, Garuda OS, OS's, respins of Arch, where the user base is not as keen to check the Arch repositories and the Arch news, because most of the answers for problems are usually answered in the Arch news items. Latest news, Linux firmware. The one right before that, Plasma 6.4.0, will need manual intervention if you're still running Xorg or X11, which I usually do, and I want it to work in my ISOs. So what I've done over the weekend on the 20th, maybe it was Friday, I don't know anymore these days. It just seemed to blend into one big nasty June heat wave. Um, on the 20th, I decided to deal with the KDE 6.4.0, the Plasma release that broke Kwin into Kwin Wayland and Kwin X11, causing problems if you wanted to boot in to Plasma or start up Plasma on X11. You now need to include the Kwin-X11 plus the Plasma-X11-sessions package, which I did. And the new ISOs I put up, well, the KDE ones, of course, have the KDE 1 has that, all those changes. So the KDE ISO, and I did a little sort of testing folder release, and since I decided to just throw up all the 620 ISOs because of the Linux firmware packaging fiasco it's turning into, I decided to put up the ISOs I made the day before Arch decided to push out the Linux firmware. I know I'm mixing up the KDE Plasma shit and the firmware shit, but stick with me. It's not going to take very long. We'll take a look at LXQt, that spin, in a moment, because LXQt spin actually has more changes or more interesting changes in terms of Wayland support now than the KDE spin has with maintaining X11 support. So the KDE spin maintains X11 support, the LXQt spin gained Wayland support, and all of them are built before or were built before the Linux firmware debacle, or what's turning into a small debacle. We'll go back to that. So all the ISOs are updated. I didn't bother updating the screenshots. They're good enough. Um, so if you want to grab, the only real difference besides the package updates is to the KDE and the LXQt ISOs. The rest are exactly what they were. I did update all the build scripts, the package lists, the install guides, the install scripts to include Kwin X11 and Plasma-X11-session packages. So if you into that, if you're into installing from my scripts or documentation, then those are updated. So, and that pretty much I wanted to get all of that new updates into the all the ISOs. So that's why I released the whole set. So let's take a look back at um, Arch Linux and their firmware issue. Now, They tell you how to install, well, remove Linux firmware and then reinstall it. If you're coming from anything dated before 6.13, which is their most recent set of firmware released, and I believe they're up to their ninth point release. Let's take a look here. Yeah, they're testing another ninth build, ninth point release. So let's take a little peek here at the changes they've been doing. So they put back a backport fix that they took out, that they put back, that they took out. Yeah. Revert some updates. Okay. Install Cirrus by default. That's the most recent into the 5.8. Well, not 5.8, the point 0.8 release build. The 0.9 release has these fixes. The 0.7 reverted a backport that 0.6 brought in that wasn't in 0.5. 0.4 and 0.3, 0.2, and the original 0.1 are, they all came out in the last week. Within 7 days, 8 days. Arch is just, you know, it's just releasing firmware and changing the entire way it's packaged all at the same time. You know what? It's not surprising that there are problems. So let's head over to the LXQt Ezarcher spin. And you can see now we have a choice of Wayland or desktop, desktop being the X11. Now, believe me, but if you choose Wayland from the live ISO, it will not work. Choose desktop, boot into an X11 session. Password is live. We'll do that. I found this out just by experimenting. And this is another benefit of me setting up my ISOs with logins and not auto logging in. This gives users a chance to do this kind of stuff. Power management, we don't need that. What we do want, though, is to go to Preferences, go to Session Settings, and under Wayland Settings, we're going to choose Kwin Wayland. Now, we can just, no, we can't. Window Manager, it is X11. Under Wayland, just change the Wayland settings. Will take effect next time you log in. And because my ISOs log in and out, let's log out. And now let's select Wayland and log in. And we should get a Wayland desktop LXQt style. Yeah. And in order to verify that, we can do a quick, let's see, Q terminal. And let's make it big so it's easy to see and do a fast fetch. And you can see Kwin Wayland is the WM in charge at the moment. So that's all good. So I hope this wasn't too confusing, too shotgun info without much explanation. It's simple stuff, but it needs to be said, needs to be recognized. And if you're running Ezarcher, hopefully you know to check the damn Arch website for information. That's where you're going to get the answers to your questions. How to do a manual intervention, how to do a manual intervention. It's all here for you. You don't have to ask people. You just have to check the news. I don't mean to degrade or whatever. People who have to ask questions, that's fine. I mean, there's always people who are too lazy to look. But if you look, you'll get your answers. And usually that's enough. So take care, stay safe, have fun. I'm out of here. Bye bye, folks.